And where we can get into a lot of conflict, I think, is when we don't recognize the nature of separate realities. We don't recognize, we don't take into account, we don't factor in this invisible immediate middleman of thought and consciousness, moment to moment to moment. So I think it might be kind of fun if you want to share a little bit of your experience in relationship before, because I would say, did you used to experience life that it would be a situation and then a feeling?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I guess you remember well when we started first seeing each other back in Madrid, and so basically my background is that I quickly brief, but I used to be an athlete, so I used to do sports, and also in relationship as in sports, I was a very kind of volcano-ish person, so I kind of went from 0 to 100 very quickly. I didn't really realize where my feelings came from. And I just got very angry pretty quickly. Not necessarily angry in a way, but like angry at myself, desperate, sad, also in relationships that, hey, I felt that some other person makes me feel somehow. And that was always the case. Like, why is she nagging at me about the dishes? And why is she not letting me play my PlayStation in peace and see my buddies when I want to see my buddies? And things like that. That was in my past, and I always thought that that's coming from the outside in. And I had this massive realization about maybe 8 months after meeting Amy and having these conversations with Amy with about 8 months ever since we met each other. And I had my guards up, so to say. I was resisting the message that Amy was trying to kind of inform me. And I don't know why. Maybe I was just it was too close to me, I guess, because it was Amy and I was falling in love with her, and I was, not listening to her fully. And then what happened, I think this is the most life-changing moment that has ever happened in my personal life, was that I was in Amsterdam back in the time. We had moved to Amsterdam. Amy had to come back to the States to work, and I stayed in Amsterdam at my work. And then I thought Amy is going to a conference in Los Angeles. So literally I thought, when I wake up, she's flying to Los Angeles. And I told my boss I was a little sad. I had a really rough day. I thought, what a distance, will this ever work? I had all this uncertain, weird thinking going on in my head. And then all of a sudden, Amy calls me and says, Amy, are you at the office? I said, yes, I am. And she said, please come outside. I'm waiting for you here. And I was just blown away. Amy had flown from New York to Amsterdam to surprise me for my birthday. And she told me, Emme, I would love to do the conference where she was going to, together with you virtually, using internet and watching it from the screen together. We started watching it and I decided, okay, I'm gonna put my ego aside. Let's use my left hand so you guys can see. I put my ego aside and I'm just gonna watch this conference about mental well-being, thoughts and feelings, and how is it to be human. And I decided, I was so in love and I was so surprised that Amy did this for me, because it was the most amazing thing no one has ever done to me. And I was, okay, I'm gonna just give my full attention and undivided focus on this conference. And then her name is Elsie Spittle. I call her my prophet. She has transformed my life, and also Amy and many others. And she mentioned in this conference that your thoughts always and always create your feelings. And I felt like a light bulb went on in my head, and I realized, I started repeating that mantra. I think you remember it. Thought creates my feelings. Oh my God, thought create my feelings. I was blown away. This little simple thing just clicked in my head. And I realized, it is not Amy who would be saying to me, why aren't you not doing the dishes, or any other person. It's always my own self. It's always my own my own thinking that creates my feelings, not anyone else or anything that comes from the outside in. And that has truly transformed my own personal well-being. And I realized, hey, there is a lot of space to learn. And I feel that I'm a student in this journey. I'm a big Star Wars fan. So I call Amy my Obi-Wan. So I'm the young Padawan here trying to learn more about myself. And I feel that, you know, I'm just in the beginning of the journey, but I do feel that as both of us, we are able to, you know, all the time develop as a couple. And as Amy mentioned, working together now has been a new chapter and a new challenge. Running a business together with your wife might sound on paper pretty crazy. And I'm sure it definitely was pretty crazy in the beginning because we had different work styles. I'm a workaholic, crazy person who doesn't stop. And Amy is our creative genius. And I have to respect that. But if I want to
type B, right? The labels, we talked about that last time.
Right. So if I want to get something done today, I want to get it done 2 hours ago. And Amy works a little differently. So we had some, you know, kind of discussions earlier. Maybe we should start realizing that there's two separate, different ways here. But the best part is circling back to the thought equals your feelings. I always remind myself when I'm starting to feel that volcano Eme returning, like I mentioned, how I was in the past, 0 to 100 very quickly. When I start feeling that, where is this kind of volcano feeling coming from? I realize that it's coming from my thoughts. It's coming from my thoughts that things are not moving as fast as they should, or I'm missing an opportunity with business, or Amy doesn't ever want to make food with me, or whatever it is, just examples. And I catch them before they become any bigger. And that's how I have personally found a better balance with my own inner well-being and being able to be more calm. And don't get me wrong, I get some volcano moments every now and then, still now. It's not like I'm perfect, I'm really trying, but every now and then you have moments where you are insecure, you are unsure of yourself, you get sad. And sometimes the defense mechanism kicks in and you get angry. But once you start realizing that it's always coming from the inside out, not from another person, has been a game changer to me when it comes to any relationships, whether it's romantic or my family or my friends. You can be more present. You can be just yourself and okay with it. And knowing that you are the one who is in control and in charge of your life is a big game changer that has happened to me. Did that make any sense? Or
I think so.
I was a little nervous to say this.
Yeah.
You are listening to What We Should Have Learned in School.
I think that was really good.
Was it good?
Yeah.
Oh, I was so nervous. I'm like sweating.
But the thing is that's so interesting too. It's the timing of it too. I think was it Maria? We were talking about this too, and Irina, and I've had some separate conversations with everybody. It's so ironic that when you genuinely let go of control or wanting to change or fix something about yourself or another person, it's like all of a sudden it pops in where something fresh appears. But it has to be genuine. It's like we can be like, okay, I'm gonna let it go. Okay, do I feel better yet? I still feel like shit. Oh, okay, it's irony of can we beep that out? I don't know. But the irony of it again is again, the more that we look to neutrally and universally how it is to be human, beyond our personal story, right? We can have our personal story, but what's underneath that? What's foundational for all human beings, right? We're all having a separate experience, but we're having that experience using the same process, right? From the inside out. Situation, it's almost like an immediate response, immediate thought, feeling connection. I kind of want to create a new word for it, like a feeling, thought and feeling. They are so inseparable, but we act as if they're not. And that can get us into more trouble. Because when we better understand something, we know how to better troubleshoot it. So it's, I think when you're talking about thought, it's not something he can really control. It's not your fault that you're in a low mood or that you have these ambitions. It's a natural part of being human. And the more that we look at neutrality, the more it opens up for us. It seems to, I don't know if it's really true, but it seems to create more spaciousness, right? If I just want to show one little thing, and then I'll open up the floor here. But it's almost like, yeah, so thinking in the moment, right? It's like what you were talking about. It's almost like life is living through us. It's the way energy interacts with us, consciousness interacting in the moment. But I'm kind of saying that we can't really control that. We might have moments of greater awareness where we have the ability to choose a thought or reframe it. But moment to moment, it's almost like our level of consciousness is also in flow. It's like thought and consciousness are constantly moving. It's constant movement in a river, the river of life, right?
I do like the river example. That's a really good example, I think.
Well, you want to share that one?
Well, I think it was helpful because I've talked with my friends about it. So, you know, in Finland, where I'm from, we kind of have this, you know, weird. It's a layer of cultural conditioning. Amy mentioned me. We actually did with Amy that kind of layer example diagram where you put all your labels, and then you come to the fact that who you really are, to defining a sentence, who you really are. And I thought that was a really cool exercise. I've never done that before. I thought it was excellent. So basically what I've realized, I've had talks with my friends back home, and all of my friends have also been quite against this kind of human, like where do our emotions come from? And these conversations are kind of being a taboo in our culture for a long, long time. And we've had this conversation, and I had a discussion with two friends of mine who've had rough, you know, past experiences with their relationships. And I mentioned to them this example that I have heard Amy saying, and I've read it from a few books, of this river example with fish in it, because in Finland we love fishing. So I thought maybe my friends might resonate to this example. So I just gave it a try. And so what it basically says is that your thoughts are like fish in the river. The river keeps flowing and flowing with the current. And then, you know, there comes like a net in between the river. Let's call this your negative thoughts, for example, or like a sense of anger, sadness, loneliness, despair, whatever you call it. And this might be very powerful, this net, and your thoughts get blocked to that net. They can't flow with the natural flow of the river. But once you start realizing that, hey, that net is just an invisible net, that's not really physically there. You are the one who is creating that net, and you are in charge of the flow of the river. Don't get me wrong, sometimes there are situations where the net really is there, and sometimes it's a little bit out of your own control with circumstances that happen in life. But in many cases, the net is necessarily not as strong as your thoughts might make it look like. And this has happened with me many, many times. But once you start realizing like, hey, you can navigate through that net a little bit so those fishes can start moving forward and new fishes come along. So these thought fishes are coming along all the time. That can make you feel so much better. And then 3 weeks after we had this discussion with my friend, and he called me and he said, Emme, I had an amazing realization this morning. And I said, what is it? He said, you know, you remember when we had a few beers and he talked to me about that fish thing and I thought you were crazy? And I said, yeah, I remember we had a great night that night. And he said, you know, I just realized that just happened to me this morning. That those fish things you mentioned, he called them salmons, which was funny. That actually happened to me this morning. And I realized that, hey, I'm the one who has created that net. I think it was something related with him and his parents. But anyhow, he said, that really helped me. So I'm starting to now come to a stage I want to learn more and get my understanding to a better level, because it really changed my mood in the day. And I woke up, I had a very rough day, had a fight with my parents, I believe. Then it just something clicked in his head about that salmon example. And ever since, he's been navigating, he's been dealing with situations much better, and has had a much healthier balance with relationships. So I think that example, at least for fishers, I guess.
Well, the dead fish example, Maria. Yeah. Thing about that, and it can be hard, like we all tend to have like a couple in life where we see this very clearly. And like, yeah, I get that that thought is kind of in the middle. And then we have other areas that I call our sticky areas where it's a lot harder for us to see it. And that's okay. If we keep kind of putting our attention back to the simplicity, back to what is universal about being human, how does experience, work? Reflect on it yourself today. Sometimes what I do, actually, this is one of my most popular podcasts, and the audio quality is so bad. I remember I laid on the floor once in our Amsterdam apartment, and I just put the record on, and I just really started asking myself these questions. Well, where does feeling come from? Is this true that thought and feeling are always connected? Because I've never had an anxious thought and felt peaceful, right? If I'm thinking about going on the plane and being in that small space, it does seem to be a 1-to-1 ratio. And so what we've been exploring in these 30 days of love, and what we'll continue to explore, is again, what's the simplest definition that we can give to who and what we are and how our feeling experience works? Where does love come from? What is love fundamentally? And it doesn't get us out of being human. Like, we're still going to get caught up. But like in the chart here, if you can see, it's almost like the simplicity that Emma was talking about with his friend, or even our relationship. It's like you have your caught up experience, but there are more moments where it just passes along naturally. Because typically, and I'll speak, this is how I used to strategize life before all the time, is on the two-way area there. So I'd have an initial thought, I'm not good enough, I'm not a good enough singer, I'm not pretty enough, my relationship isn't blah, blah, blah. It's like we have that thought, and then we have thinking about our thinking. Well, it's wrong for me to think that way. I wish I could be thinking differently. Maybe I should try to do this. And why does this always happen to me? And then all of a sudden, you're on a thought train of all the past memories coming forward, right? It becomes loaded. It becomes heavy. Our mental bandwidth gets just completely occupied, right? It's not that insight can't happen in those moments, because it can, but it's stickier, it's heavier, it's busier, right? So the potential is for life to continue to move through us, right? It's like we've got that gratitude in the highs and the grace in the lows, and we keep kind of moving forward. One thing definitely, last thing I'll say before we open up to everybody, because I'd like to really hear what you guys are hearing and seeing about this, is when we realize that if we're in a low mood, it's not our partner's fault, and that it's not their job to fix it. That was a game changer, definitely for you. When you realized that I wasn't blaming you. I remember we got into like a really bad argument in Amsterdam. Man, Amsterdam was the time of change, but really bad argument where he was basically upset that I wasn't blaming him for how I was feeling. He's like, can't you just be a normal person and blame me? Like, he was so angry. I was like, I can't, it's not logical, I can't. But it's amazing though, again, I don't think we ever had a conversation like that again. It's like, once you open up, you have the greater seam for each other, you're popcorning with your insights, but taking that blame and shame away has made a big difference. Where I was going through the days, and especially flow, it's like, I've had a lot of pain this week. I've had a couple emergency dental visits, and they still don't really know what's going on with it. But what I've noticed is that I don't remember the last time I experienced a bad day. I have bad moments, I have bad hours, but when we recognize the fluctuation even in the day, it's like there are moments where it's a lot more painful, and there's moments where I'm not focused and it's less painful, right? So it's like this constant fluctuation, and that can be a really different way to relate to yourself, a gentler way perhaps to relate. All right, Maria. Yeah.
Okay. So I've known for a minute now that I'm like the creator of my own reality, right? And it's my thoughts and my reactions to the things that are going on around me, that really sort of create what I live in and how I experience things. So that's not new. But that being said, it's like what I'm finding myself having to do is be really gentle with myself. Like I have been so judgmental of myself, like even within the series of just not being at the state that I want to be or whatever, or creating the reality that I want to have. And it's a matter of, for me, what's been giving me peace is just realizing that we're exactly where I'm at, kind of to your point, Amy, is like where I'm supposed to be right now. Like I need to be sort of learning the lessons that I'm learning through these experiences. Yeah, they don't feel great. They don't feel comfortable. Like, you know, there's stuff that I'm having to go within and be like, whoa, I wasn't even aware I had this like little Maria in here that she just wants some love and some attention, you know? So it's like just a matter of, rather than, so it's like taking Emil's example or Emmett's example and applying it to myself. So like knowing that I do already know that I create my reality. I'm not like a master reality manifestor, reality creator, whatever, you know? And it's like just being gentle and loving towards myself as I'm sort of working through integrating and balancing. And like the other thing I would share is what this 30 Days of Love series has been for me is I feel like I loved myself going into it, but I didn't have unconditional love for myself. You know, so it was like I would judge myself or be really hard on myself or be really angry at myself when I was sad or mad, or I'd avoid those feelings. Actually, to be fair, that's what this is really all about. I would avoid them. I wouldn't deal with them in so many different ways. It wasn't just alcohol. It was like I'd get really busy, or I just realized yesterday, actually, through doing dynamic, that I was basically spiritual bypassing, which I don't know if you guys know what that means, but basically like what I've been doing for the past year is like meditating or like whatever. And there's not to say that there's anything wrong with that, right? Like I still love it. I still do it every single day. But at some point I have to face like my emotions and my feelings and learn to love the uncomfortable ones, you know, because they're an aspect of me, you know, they're an aspect of me that just wants to be seen. So it's like this whole series has been about being gentle with myself, being compassionate with myself, recognizing that even though I'm creating something that's uncomfortable and I don't enjoy it, there's a higher purpose, higher perspective. And it's all about learning to love all of who I am, not just, you know, the light, happy aspects, but literally every single aspect. So yeah, being gentle, being patient, moving into unconditional love, and just being there. Honestly, that's the way I could boil it down, being there for myself.
I think what you just shared is very powerful, because what I've also come across, especially during this COVID-19, and having my family on the other side of the planet, different continent, I've been also dealing with a lot of emotions and thoughts. What has been very helpful to me when it comes to my inner well-being has been that, you know, my well-being is always only one thought away. Because how I see it, I have had these stormy days with all these horrible scenarios in my heads. And the more I think about, let's say, I've just taken an example, my father, who I love dearly, he's my idol, my role model, one of my single most important people in my life, and he has a pre-existing condition. Makes me even emotional talking about it. But so I've been, you know, dealing with a lot of emotional stress. What if something happens? What if he gets sick? I'm here, I can't even fly home. And I've been, you know, it's been rough in my head. And for the past couple of weeks, I've kind of had this realization that, you know, I was very low, I had a low state of mind. I was sad. I was, you know, not in the best mood. And I realized I was the one who was creating it. It was not reality. It was thoughts and it was scenarios. And the more I thought about these scenarios, the more real they seemed and felt. Nothing had happened. My father was healthy and jogging and fine, in a great spirit. But in my head, I was already preparing to the worst, even with nothing happened. Nothing had happened. And I realized, you know, why am I doing this to myself? And I realized, okay, let's just let the natural flow of thoughts come and go, and don't get so hang up with those thoughts. And that was a really big changer for me. And for the past couple of weeks, I've been calling my dad almost every day, being present, chatting about sports like we always do, and normal things, not even going there. And that's been so helpful. I've been able to sleep better. I've been in a much healthier state of mind, because I've realized even now, every now and then I still get those thoughts, those scenarios and those what ifs, but I don't give them so much meaning anymore, because there's so many things we can't control and only oh so much we can. And once you make those thoughts and just get naturally let them flow, that's been very helpful for me, especially during times like this when we are dealing with a lot of unexpected things and variables out of our hands. So I think that's been something that is recently happened with me. And I think Amy has been also obviously her amazing self helping me with this and kind of pointing me to the direction, what I just mentioned, of realizing that fact. And it's really been helpful for me, how I deal with everything. And just seeing my lovely sister here also, far away, but we still are here, and just being present with each other. It's just such a miraculous thing, really. So.
Well, there's something I think about what Maria and you have shared, and that is, when we look at it, when we begin to investigate that this might be a neutral process, right? It's like, it's not personal that we get caught up, that that we're not where we want to be, right, Maria? It's not our fault. It's not personal. When we begin to recognize that not being where we want to be or getting caught up in the future isn't anything to be ashamed about. It's how the system is built to work. It's like you said, it can open up the space for that unconditional love, for the judgments to fall away, because we realize, oh, the judgments are just thoughts. They don't have any matter to them. They're not an absolute truth, right? When we can see that a little bit deeply, it's kind of like, okay, we can let it go, because we realize it's not personal. It's not a reflection of us, of who or what we are. But it feels really intense, so it's easy to forget. That thought feeling, I mean, it's so intense. It's so intense. But we can continue to look to that gentleness, look to that truth of this principle of thought and feeling. It's neutral, it's transient, it's universal. It's constantly ebbing and flowing, right? We're constantly moving. It's a different way to begin to relate. Anyone else want to share anything? I know we've chatted a lot here, but it's such an exciting topic. It's my favorite. Irina, okay. Let's do Irina, Adriana, and then Margie. Okay. Irina, did I unmute you? Irina, did I do it?
Yeah. Hi. So this is like really intense. I have to be really present because I'm like, yeah, I know what they're talking about. And then I'm like, I don't know. So it goes like in and out. But I think one thing I mentioned earlier on the call, like with the dog, it's been so intense. Like it's just been this emotional. And I noticed like for me to be able to sit with my feelings about that, like I realized that I'm like, oh, I need to do this and this and this for the dog's like well-being. And then I'm like, actually, I need to hide in the bathroom because he's biting me and I can't like think. So I need new thoughts because the emotions are like so intense that I can't like perceive. So I've just been like breathing in the bathroom, like holding my rib cage. I'm like, this moment, just this moment, like I don't have to think about anything else. So that's kind of the level of intensity. And then realizing like, if I don't like come back to myself and accept these emotions, so just like Maria was saying, like face the emotions and love myself through this process, I can't like, it's like limping forward for the dog. And so I realized like just sometimes like, that's why I said more times in the last like 2 weeks have I been like, like I really allowed myself to just be in that place, totally emotionally, what did you say, spiritual bypassing for like years. I'm like, oh, I've been doing this really well. So just letting that come and then watching it go. And I thought what was so powerful about this, especially in the context of pets, kids, partners, wherever we have thoughts, which are beliefs about what we need to do for somebody else or someone else. The resilient day, I'm still like, I don't remember what, I think I'm on patient, day 14, but the resilient day was so helpful in like, it was really profound to be like, oh, trauma can lead to resilience, that it's not a like situation feeling, poop, but that it can be like trauma doesn't necessarily can perpetuate trauma, but it can also lead to resilience in many more times. So I started thinking about like examples in my life where that had been true, because I was keenly aware of all the places where it had not been true, but finding in my own life and hearing stories also of that, you know, really impacting people in a positive way. So I'm like, okay, if the dog gets traumatized with separation anxiety because we left it home alone, you know, then it's like, oh, but what if it doesn't? And realizing I don't know, I actually don't know. So I can make different choices and just like give myself a break, because it's not a causation. We don't know. So just do the best you can until you know a little bit better. So it's been, yeah. So that's, we call him the professor, the dog, and Professor Poopy Butthole, but professor. And he's like the spiritual teacher around here. So yeah, thank you for letting me share that.
Well, Irina, thank you for sharing that, Irina. Thank you so much. Oh, and now, Mom, Adriana. Here we go. I think are you unmuted? Oh, no, yes.
And
Oh,
now
sorry.
I'm not?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Adriana.
Hi. Sorry, I don't have such an exciting share as Irina's. I just wanted to point some things out of my experience with kind of like Emma, what Emma did, his share. And you alluded to it, like very briefly, Amy. What has been my major insight of the journey of going through this, discovering the separation between the thoughts and feelings, and that there's thought that we somehow create or comes to us and we identify with it, blah, 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 whatever, the whole story. I'm not going to go through it because you explain it much better than I do. Has been, and it has been for almost like 2 years for me, the thought of this is not personal. Like I so started seeing it in every encounter, which prior to that, I was getting like really unhappy and sad because of it and how I was failing myself. But when I started seeing it, like it carried me through, like, and I'm thinking, I should be more upset. Like I was like really in the observer. I'm thinking, this is really not personal. This is not about me. It's about the other person. I feel sorry for them. I don't think I can help them. But the best thing I can do is just not to take it personally for me. And even now, like in this situation, I can see how helpful that is. Maybe it's not enough, but it makes a major difference. And as for, like, I don't know, I have a lot of things, I just like Irina, I get excited, and, you know, the shining object syndrome, I have so many shares that I could do, but her story with the dog, can you imagine, like for me, I raised Irina. I made my own mistakes, by the way, that she later on, very helpfully, she was telling me, do you know you traumatized me because you did this? I'm thinking, I had no clue. How was I supposed to know? So I said, well, okay, I think this is yours. I was trying to point out that I think this is yours. Don't put it on me. But I already forgave myself. I didn't know any better, right? So now when she's bringing up the stuff with the dog, I can see the parallels with me and her at the time when she was a baby maybe, or a toddler. It's like, yeah, but did I know any better? No, I didn't. So I can let it go.
One of my mentors shared a story, Adriana, of her dad used to beat her so bad that she would get really migraine headaches and had a lot of physical ailments because of that. And I remember she then, after she began investigating this, what we're talking about for a little while, as an adult, she went back to have a conversation with her dad. And she asked him, she said, you know, Dad, why did you hit me when I was a kid? You know, why'd you do that? And he said, and he looked at her deadpan and he said, what else was I supposed to do? Now, that isn't to condone hitting children, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that behavior is okay. What I'm trying to highlight is back up exactly what you're saying, Adriana, that we don't know what we don't know. We can only take action from our level
of thinking.
that time. So to go back and try to beat ourselves up for things in the past, absolutely, it's a no-win endeavor, because we can say we could have done better, but now we know better. Before we didn't have the realization then. And so we can be more gentle in these roles, whatever roles that we wear a lot of.
So 2 more things. I'll be very short. Number one, you again touched on some of my stories. I don't even want to talk about it. I was one of those beaten kids for no reason until very late. And my mom is not around. I mean, she died many years ago. This realization, this understanding made me forgive her in the past. Okay? And I don't need to go rehash that story, and I don't need to go have psychotherapy and so on and so forth. That's it. End of story. And we never had conversations about that either. So I cannot have closure with somebody. And even if you think you can have closure, you can't. What is it going to do? Unless you are able to take it in and just forgive, right? I actually think this understanding is what can save our world. I'm a big believer in that. Most of the problems. And I don't know what was the second thing, because it doesn't matter.
Adriana, I love also how you said the thoughts that come to us, right? It's like this, it just comes to us. It's like, it's not, I just love how you put that, to try to nail down again that this really isn't personal. When I talk about our thinking or my thinking, I'm not talking about the conscious thinking of like, oh, I'm going to have a sandwich for dinner. Like it's so much deeper than that. It's so much more fundamental to our experience. And our little egos, our little brains aren't in control of that. That would be like saying we are the reason why the flowers grow up and face the sun, right? There's a larger intelligence.
Exactly.
And when we begin to look at that, it's so easy to see that we're just a little grain of sand on the beach, right? We're part of it. We can co-create without the shame, without the baggage, without the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. You know? Nice. Should we go to Miss Margie? Miss Margie here. Anything else you want to share, Adrian?
No, I think the second thing that I wanted to share when I said I will be short, and this also happened to me relatively recently, a few months ago. All of a sudden, with a colleague of mine that I completely did not agree with his view of the world, right? Where he was seeing the world as, conspiracy theories. Somebody's always out to take profit. Everything is a ripoff and so on and so forth. But I had one moment where all of a sudden I saw him as a human being that was trying to do the best of his world. Not that I cannot I understood where he's coming from. I could not be part of that world because that's not how I think. But I have compassion. So it was like another one of those light bulb moments where even though I could not feel much that we have in common, just because of that worldview that he had, I had compassion. Hey, maybe I've been there as well, in my own little box of thinking, and how we really truly live in these separate realities that sometimes we don't have access to, right? But all you have to do is to look for, well, there are certain things we have in common, even though that thought-made reality is not the same for each one of us, right? So we have to look there. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to share.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, it's so fun. It's like, I never want to leave these Sunday calls. Oh, Margie?
Hey guys, can you hear me? Am I muted? Okay. wow. So I just joined and I feel I'm getting so much from this already. I just started yesterday, by the way. So this is awesome. So yeah, this is, about a month ago, I was going through a really hard time and I was talking to Amy over WhatsApp, and, I was crying and suffering, and something that she said kind of like made me realize. She said how the brain is an extraordinary thing and has so much power. And she said, about being in the moment, being in the present, to limit the suffering and to limit the anxiety, because only the present is what we can control right now, is I can control how I feel right now. So that really helped me to kind of like, because I was on a spiral of like suffering and anxiety, and that really touched me. And now what Emma said about, your well-being is only one thought away, it just brings the whole thing together, because it made me feel, yes, I was creating these feelings because I was just working up this anxiety and just suffering more and more. And if I can just remember that I can stop and I control the moment right now, and I can just change my thoughts and I can feel better, then that's what I have to do. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, huge insight within 45 minutes of this. So thanks, guys.
I think, Margie, one thing that I wanted to share also, I'm actually right now doing a little experiment of my own, where I've realized that we talked about this with Amy, but it's my little secret project. So I thought I might share this in this call, because let's see how can I articulate this. But anyhow, so I've now realized that I have kind of taken my ego here on my hand.
Yeah.
My own ego, which has been very exciting, because I had this weird thinking that, when it comes to business, for example, I'm a very business oriented guy, and I realized that it's a lot of my own thinking and my own ego when it comes to anything, including business or relationships. And I've now started this new experiment of really starting to understand my own ego in a more fundamental way, and realizing that all of that is made up. Nothing is real. My ego, which is now here on my hand, and I'm poking it with a needle, and it hurts sometimes. But I've realized that that's all made up. It's not reality. It's my own thoughts, my upbringing, a lot of layers of it. It's a big experiment, and I think it's going to take a while for me to unravel that onion of ego, peel it out slowly.
Yeah.
Like lifelong lasting project. It's exciting because I've already found out new angles of my own self. Like, why I'm like, I think, Maria, you mentioned of being so harsh on yourself and being so judgmental of yourself. And that's been very helpful for me as well, of starting to realize that, hey, who is the one who is judgmental for yourself than your own self? So that's been very fundamental. To Margie, your point too, of, that everything is one thought away, and that ego it really is there. Even you don't see it, it really is there, and it's all made up. It's not reality, and that's been mind-blowing to me. I think Amy can relate to that, because she knows me pretty well. So I've had strong thinking about myself. Maybe it's from my athlete background, growing up in that spirit that you have to always be the best. You have to win, do everything. You have to always just win and be the best. Also, you're on the spotlight, people watching, spectators, media, all these things, Yeah. And it grows. And once you realize that's all made up, it's pretty profound and even crazy. I mean, I've had some moments when I'm like, oh my goodness, this is pretty crazy, when I'm being poking it, and it's painful.
Yeah.
Did that make any sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Don't know.
Okay.
So we got some nods, yeah. We just get together on Sunday and talk happy. Talk about crazy things, healing the world with our words. But no, seriously. I mean, it is amazing that the person that we take ourselves to be is not objectively who or what we really are. That's we didn't come out of the womb with these loaded ideas of needing to be a certain way or do a certain thing. When we learned to walk, we weren't walking to try to look like the best kid in the room, because walking was a more effective way than crawling to get to where we wanted to go. Maybe there was a nice num-num, nice chocolate chip cookie. Right. And then I don't know, it just through cultural conditioning, just through being in the world, we kind of by osmosis take on the beliefs of culture, of family, of teachers, and before we know it, we lose sight of the fact that that isn't who we are, that is just one interpretation, that's just one system of belief out of billions of beliefs. But it also, realizing it's not the absolute truth, it gives us a little bit more flexibility. Anyone else want to share anything? I know this is a big topic. I'm sorry we're over time, but okay, Wendy. Hey, Wendy. Do we unmute there? Oh. Okay, Wendy.
I really like the thing about the river. And like I feel like with the where you're supposed to be, I felt that a lot through the journey. It's like things are coming up that I like, this should be happening, like things are being synchronicity, but the river really means something to me, because in our town, in the town that I live in, Iowa City, the river literally divides the town. And we had a flood years back where there was one bridge that was open and it never shut down. We have several bridges and we always had a way over to the other side. And it's the sense of the river is so important here, but what you said is true with letting the thoughts and feelings and flow, and that letting them get caught up in the net, because that's the way that I've had a stressful week. And when you said that about the river, it's like, that's why I'm stuck, because I'm just letting everything get caught in that net and not letting it flow through. That it was just a big realization. And I can relate to what Amy was saying about the layers, because it's like sometimes I feel like with me it's like an onion and like things are coming off in layers. And even though it was stressful and I did get stuck, I can still, like every week I can feel like layers coming off with this. But the river just like really clicked, especially with the town I'm in, and that river flowing through it. That there was a movie and it was like based on our state, not the city I'm in, but the river plays really importance in the state. There's several rivers here.
Yeah. As we go in the river, one colorful fish gets our eye, a nice colorful salmon, and then we like get our bucket and we pick out the fish. We're like, this is me, I'm this fish, and we hold on to whatever this is, and instead of like, oh well, catch and release, right? Like, catch and release, let's see if something else pops in. Less identification and to just flow with that river. Wendy, really cool. Really cool.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Wendy.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Really awesome.
Thank you.
Great, I see Marva, beautiful Marva. Unmuting Marva. Hello.
Good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I don't have anything huge to say, but I wanted to thank everybody for being so brave with their realizations as we travel through this, because a lot of the realizations don't, when you are caught in the thought loop, they don't feel real kind and loving to yourself. And realizing that you've been having these thoughts and dragging them along with you, and you keep pulling them with you as you've moved, but always going back to what Adriana said. I really truly believe that we're all trying to do the best that we can with the information that we have available to us at any given moment. And that, I mean, and that broadens out to a much bigger spectrum. We're talking about right now our understanding of thoughts and feelings, when we can only actually have the conversation to the point that we have an understanding of how that works, you know? So really there never is going to be a time when we just sit back and say, okay, great, well, got that all dialed in, so I don't have to go that direction anymore. I know all there is to know now, because every single moment is another packet of information, and especially with access to constant information. Now, a lot of that information is crap, but it is, it's always available. I mean, it's in your hand. You're walking around with it. People call you on it. I mean, that's fabulous, because I remember having only a word processor to, you know, and no such thing as an actual computer in your house, you know. So things are moving at a very fast pace. But I did want to tell you that at this particular part, when it gets uncomfortable, that's when my ego kicks in to gear. And I know that the realization is coming from a place of fear, because my ego doesn't generally show up if I'm walking around with balloons and licking a lollipop and seeing unicorns. That's not when it shows up. It shows up when I'm in fear. So I have that thought, and I can look at that fear, and I can say, ah, I see that. Time for you to go sit in the timeout chair with your box of crayons and your coloring book. You go over there, I'll drive the car. Thanks for your input. And, you know, and just not. It's not that I want to block that information, because the egos are serving their purpose. However, they're not driving the car. They don't get control over the situation. They just get to go sit in the timeout chair. You got anything else to say over there in the timeout chair? Okay, cool. Duly noted.
Duly noted.
That's a great example, that timeout chat.
Yeah, I love that.
That's a great.
Me too.
Anyway, that really, thank you all so much for all of your input, because that is our true connection, is being able to share this journey that is somewhat uncomfortable and real uncomfortable at particular times, without feeling like you shouldn't say something or you shouldn't be in a certain place, just totally unconditional. And that is our humanity. And that's what I hope, after all of this social distancing is over with, that we come out of this with, is that humanity and that connection to everyone, the people. Anyway, see you later, everybody. I'm going back to my tiny picture in the corner.
Thank you, Marva. That's awesome. I love that vision. Great. Anyone else want to share anything before we wind it up today? I think that was awesome. Awesome visual. True.
I love the timeout box.
He's gonna use it.
That was perfect.
So true, though.
With the ego layering. Time to you go to the timeout box. I love it.
I think I saw, I can't really read everything in the chat, but I think what Maria was saying was something about like just the awareness of that, just being able to realize that the ego is just one part of your dynamic life, not the whole thing. It's a huge difference in your lived experience and your reactivity.
I think there was one very interesting kind of, it was an article I read from one of the coaches that I personally really resonate with, and I love reading his stuff. And his name is Michael Neal, one of my favorites. And I read a book from him, and he mentioned in the book that there is 98% of things that are something that you can't control, and only about 2% that you necessarily can control. And that's something that I try to remind myself of when it comes to relationship, when it comes to this COVID-19, when it comes to anything in life, that there's oh so much you can control, and then the rest just flows on. And I've been trying to be a more, Amy calls me sometimes a little control freak when it comes to business. You know, again, working together with your wife can be, you know, interesting. So, you know, in a very positive way too. But so point is, I was trying to control a lot of things. And again, my ego talking, trying to control things. And I've started to try to calm down, so to say, and just let it naturally flow. Also with our relationship, respecting Amy's time, Amy's amazing work, what she's doing. And, you know, that's been, again, very helpful for me personally when it comes to how we work together as a family unit in business, in life, and also in everything else. I think that's been very helpful because you can't control everything. That's just how it is. And I just try to remember that myself also when I try to navigate this thing called life and realize that, you know. So that's been pretty, I've never really thought about it as I have in the past couple of weeks or so. So that's been interesting.
Well, again, I just second and third what everyone's saying about this is a really special space that you guys have created at Intention Inspired. You know, there's no trolling and we're just free to be and explore. And that's what I love about this line of investigation, is it really honors and respects everybody's own seeing. And again, we just keep asking and growing together of what's the simplest explanation. What's our shared humanity, right? What's at the core, right? Love, 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 love. I see you, Matt. I see you. Great. Well, I think, again, I know we're a little over, so I think this feels like a good spot to leave it for now. Again, be patient with yourself, you know, throughout the modules, just stay in there, you know, but if you've got to take a couple days break to let it sit, you know, feel free. If you feel really inspired one day to do a couple days at a time, go ahead. You're never behind with it. I think one thing that came up for me when you're talking about also your ambitions with business and wanting to get the results right away, it was the day 14 quote. And that just really resonates with me on so many levels, that nature doesn't hurry, yet everything is accomplished, and we are nature. So beginning to look into that greater intelligence is so much more practical than trying to get the ego, give it all to the ego, right? We can be wiser, we can tap into our intuition and our resilience.
Thank you so much for all your supportive comments. It really means a lot. I was a little nervous, I can't lie. I don't really do this often.
I think I just said last night, like, hey, you want to come on the call tomorrow? He's like, okay, sure.
So thanks for the support. I really, really appreciate it.
Great, guys. Well, until next week, keep on keeping on, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye bye.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, unmute. There's a button for it, but
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take
Hi,
care.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I can't find the button. Oh, there it is. Bye.
open. I want to. Oh, great. Yeah, cool.
Bye bye, Margie.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Margie, awesome. We're so great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah. Sweet. we'll see you next week. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. All right, Matt.
Good to see you.
Bye. Thanks, guys. Emmett, that was beautiful. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That was a treat. Very special.
If you found today's episode inspiring and thought-provoking or heartwarming, I really invite you to join us over at Intention Inspired under the 30 Days of Love course. This is a very affordable, accessible community. As you can tell, it's a community where we are really building one another up and we're supporting one another in finding greater peace of mind, experiencing greater love in our lives. So I really encourage you to check that out. I have to say, my expectations for this course, for this community, have far been exceeded. So that has been a really pleasant surprise, and it's a really, dare I say, magical place over there. So especially during times like this where so many of us feel scared, we feel isolated, it really is priceless to have such a warm group of individuals there to support you and there to share and with who you can bounce ideas back and forth with. So I'll put that link in the show notes below. And otherwise, I encourage you to subscribe to What We Should Have Learned in School. It could help you out, maybe not, but you won't know unless you press that subscribe button. Until next time, stay curious, take care of yourself, and keep rocking. We've got this.